Part 2, YouTube video description. When a wounded alien warrior crash lands on Earth with hours to live, the entire galaxy watches to see if humanity's legendary compassion is real or just another myth. What begins as a desperate rescue mission becomes a story that changes everything we thought we knew about survival, friendship, and what it truly means to refuse to give up on someone. This is not just a tale of first contact. This is the moment the universe discovered why you should never underestimate a human who decides someone is worth saving. In this HFY Humanity F******, yeah. Science fiction story, witness the power of human determination, the strength of unlikely bonds, and the moment one act of kindness ripples across the stars. From the creators at HFY Codex Archives, we bring you original sci-fi stories that celebrate humanity's greatest strengths. Our stubborn refusal to accept the impossible, our capacity to care for those different from us, and our ability to turn enemies into family. This is an original story written and owned by HFY Codex Archives. If you enjoyed this tale of human resilience and interstellar friendship, please like this video and leave your thoughts in the comments below. Subscribe to HFY Codex Archives for more stories that showcase why humanity's greatest weapon isn't our technology or our strength. It's our heart. Bell subscribe for weekly HFY stories thumbs up. Like if this story moved you, speech balloon, comment your favorite moment, link, share with fellow sci-fi fans. Welcome to HFY Codex Archives, where humanity's spirit shines across the stars. Night fire fell from heaven. The meteorite warnings came too late. By the time Earth's detection systems registered the object's trajectory, it had already punched through the atmosphere, painting the Montana sky in shades of burning orange and electric blue. But this was no meteorite. Dr. Sarah Chun had been camping in the Bitterroot Mountains when the sky exploded with light. 20 years as an aerospace engineer had taught her to recognize the difference between natural phenomena and controlled descent burns. This object was trying not to crash. It was just failing. The impact shook the ground beneath her tent. Sarah grabbed her emergency kit and started running toward the smoke plume rising above the tree line. Her rational mind screamed that this was dangerous, possibly radioactive, definitely above her pay grade. But a stronger instinct pushed her forward. Someone might need help. What lay in the crater? The crash site was smaller than she expected. A pod-like craft, maybe 20 feet long, had carved a burning scar through the forest. The hull was made of material Sarah had never seen, metallic but organic looking, still glowing with residual heat, and it was open. She approached carefully, her flashlight cutting through the smoke. That's when she saw him. The alien was massive, easily 8 feet tall even lying down. His body was covered in what looked like crystalline armor, deep purple and silver, cracked in dozens of places. Bioluminescent blood, actual glowing blue blood, leaked from visible wounds. For arms, 2 legs, a face that was simultaneously reptilian and insectoid, with 6 eyes that flickered weakly. He was dying. Sarah didn't need medical training to see that. The alien's breathing was labored, his chest rising and falling in irregular patterns. One of his arms reached weakly towards something inside the pod, a device of some kind. "Hey!" Sarah said softly, knowing he probably couldn't understand. "Hey, it's okay. I'm going to help you." The alien's eyes focused on her, with visible effort. His mouth opened, revealing rows of crystalline teeth, and he made sounds, complex, musical, nothing like any language Sarah had ever heard. But the meaning in his expression was universal. Fear, pain, and something that looked like warning. The impossible choice. Sarah's phone had no signal. The crash had probably fried every electronic device for miles. Her camping radio was dead. She was alone in the wilderness with a dying alien, and the nearest hospital was 3 hours away, even if she could somehow transport him. The logical choice was to hike back to her car, drive until she got signal, call every government agency she could think of. Let the professionals handle this. By the time they arrived, the alien would be dead, but at least she would be safe. Sarah looked at those 6 dimming eyes and made a different choice. "I'm not leaving you," she said firmly. "I don't care if you understand me or not. I'm not letting you die alone in the woods." She dropped to her knees beside him, her hands hovering uncertainly over his wounded body. Her engineering training kicked in. This was just a problem to solve. Stop the bleeding. Stabilize the patient. keep him alive until real help arrived. The bioluminescent blood was hot to the touch but didn't burn. Sarah used her first aid kit, her camping supplies, even her spare clothing to pack the worst wounds. The alien watched her with what might have been confusion or might have been hope. The long night, hours passed. Sarah talked constantly, her voice the only thing keeping both of them calm. She told him about Earth, about humans, about the fact that she had absolutely no idea what she was doing but was too stubborn to quit. She told him about her daughter, about how she'd driven her ex-husband crazy with her inability to leave broken things broken. "That's my problem," she said, adjusting another makeshift bandage. "I see something hurt, and I have to try to fix it, even when it's impossible. Especially when it's impossible." The alien's breathing had stabilized slightly. His eyes tracked her movements now, more alert than before. One of his four hands moved slowly, carefully, and touched her wrist. The gesture was gentle despite the clawed fingers. Sarah felt tears on her face, without realizing she'd started crying. "You're going to make it," she said. "I don't know how, but you're going to make it. Because I decided you are, and I'm really, really stubborn." As if in response, the alien made a sound, softer than before, almost like a purr mixed with wind chimes. His bioluminescent blood had stopped leaking from most wounds. The ones Sarah had managed to bandage were somehow sealing themselves, the torn crystalline armor beginning to regenerate, the dawn of understanding. When the sun finally rose, Sarah had been awake for 24 hours straight. The alien, she had started calling him Star in her head, was breathing normally now. The wounds that had seemed fatal hours ago were closing at a visible rate. Sarah sat back against a tree, exhausted. "Okay," she muttered. "So, apparently alien biology includes ridiculous healing factors. That would have been nice to know before I used my entire wardrobe as bandages." Star's 6 eyes were fully alert now, studying her with unmistakable intelligence. He made more sounds, complex patterns that Sarah's tired brain couldn't even begin to decode. But when she didn't respond, he tried something else. He pointed at himself and made a specific sound, then pointed at Sarah and tilted his head questioningly. "Oh!" Sarah sat up straighter. "Names. You want to know names?" She pointed at herself. "Sarah Chun." Star repeated the gesture to himself and made his complex sound again. Then he pointed at the sky, made a sweeping gesture, and showed her his palms in what might have been a universal gesture of peace. "You're not here to invade," Sarah guessed. "You crashed. Accident." Star nodded, actually nodded, which meant either humans and his species shared some gestures or he was already learning human body language. He pointed at his pod, made an explosion gesture with his hands, then pointed skyward again. "Someone shot you down," Sarah understood. "You were running from something." Another nod. Star stood carefully, testing his regenerated limbs. He was even more impressive at full height, towering over Sarah's modest 5'6" frame. But he moved gently, carefully, showing no aggression. He looked at the bandages Sarah had applied. Most had fallen away as his body healed, but a few remained where she tied them especially tight. Star touched one carefully, then looked at Sarah with an expression she couldn't quite read. He made a long, complex sound. Then he placed all 4 hands over his chest in a gesture that needed no translation. "Thank you," the message that changed everything. Star's pod had been broadcasting a distress signal since the crash. Sarah hadn't known because it was on frequencies human equipment couldn't detect, but others had heard it. The first ship arrived at noon, a massive vessel that uncloaked directly above the forest. Sarah's first instinct was to run, but Star placed a gentle hand on her shoulder, keeping her still. More of his species emerged from the ship, along with members of other alien races Sarah had no names for. What happened next would be analyzed by xenopsychologists for decades. The rescue team had expected to recover a corpse. Instead, they found Krezith. That was Star's actual name. Sarah learned, alive and healing, protected by a human who had spent the entire night keeping him stable with nothing but primitive first aid and sheer determination. The lead medic, a being that looked like a floating jellyfish made of light, scanned both of them and made sounds of disbelief. Krezith explained what had happened in his musical language. The medic turned to Sarah and, through a translation device, said, "You should not have been able to save him. His injuries were fatal. His biology should have been toxic to you. You should have called authorities and maintained safe distance. Why did you do this?" Sarah looked at the medic, then at Krezith, then back. She was exhausted, covered in bioluminescent blood, and completely out of patience. "Because he needed help," she said simply. "What else was I supposed to do? Let him die?" The medic made a sound that the translator rendered as shock confusion. "Most species would. Yes, self-preservation dictates." "I don't care what it dictates," Sarah interrupted. "Someone was hurt. Someone needed help. So I helped. That's what humans do." She didn't know it yet, but those words, transmitted across the galaxy, would become one of the most quoted statements in interstellar relations, because they revealed something about humanity that most species had considered mere rumor or exaggeration. Humans actually meant it. They really would help anyone, anywhere, even at cost of themselves, even when it made no logical sense. Quarantine and questions. They took Sarah and Krezith to a facility she didn't recognize. Definitely not any government installation she'd ever heard of. Turned out Earth had been hosting a small alien observation post for decades, carefully hidden from public knowledge. Now that post was in full crisis mode. Sarah sat in what she assumed was a medical bay. Silver walls that seemed to shift color based on light, while a dozen different species of doctors ran tests on her. Krezith was in the next room, visible through a transparent wall, undergoing similar examination. "We need to understand what happened," the jellyfish medic, Dr. Luminera, apparently explained to the translator. "Krezith of species, the Therics, have a complex immune system. Contact with unknown species usually triggers fatal rejection responses in both parties. You should have become deathly ill from his blood. He should have reacted to your touch like it was acid. Instead, you both show increased healing rates and biochemical compatibility that should be impossible." Sarah watched Krezith through the wall. He was watching her too, those 6 eyes tracking her every movement. "Maybe humans are just compatible with everyone," she suggested. Dr. Luminera's form rippled with what might have been laughter. "That is precisely what concerns us. The theory that terrified the galaxy." Sarah spent 3 days in the facility while scientists from a dozen worlds studied her and Krezith. She learned that humanity's unofficial status in galactic civilization was under observation pending threat assessment. Earth was considered a potentially dangerous world, not because humans were violent, though they could be, but because they were unpredictable. "You form bonds with anything," explained Ambassador Trexus, "a dignified being with silver skin, and for arms similar to Krezith's but more slender. You domesticate predators and call them pets. You befriend robots. You create emotional attachments to plants. You give names to vehicles and mourn when they break. This is unusual." "So," Sarah crossed her arms defensively. "So," Trexus continued carefully, "there's a theory in xenopsychology called the bonding plague. It suggests that humans might have a biochemical or psychic ability that creates forced attachments in other species. That you might be, essentially, emotional parasites." Sarah stared at the ambassador. "You think I brainwashed Krezith into liking me? I kept him from dying. That's not mind control, that's basic decency." Many species would disagree. Most would prioritize their own safety and summon authorities. You endangered yourself for a being you had never met, of a species you didn't know existed. You spent hours in physical contact with substances that should have killed you. And now Krezith shows measurable psychological attachment to you that formed in a single night. Do you see why this concerns us?" The truth Krezith revealed. The breakthrough came when Krezith refused to continue cooperating with Tess unless he could speak with Sarah directly, without observation or translation monitoring. The scientists reluctantly agreed and left him alone in a conference room. Krezith had learned basic English with shocking speed. Apparently, the Therics had natural linguistic abilities that made human polyglots look like amateurs. His voice was still musical, the words slightly off in pronunciation, but understandable. "They think you infected me," he said without preamble. They think humans carry some virus of emotion. Sarah nodded tiredly. Yeah, I got that impression. They are wrong. Krezith leaned forward, all 6 eyes intense. Sarah, my species is warrior caste. We are bred from birth for combat, for loyalty to our empire, for strength above all else. We are taught that weakness is failure, that needing help is shame, that injury in battle is either temporary setback or honorable death. He gestured at his regenerated armor. When I crashed, I was prepared to die. It was acceptable outcome. I had failed my mission. My ship was destroyed. I was on primitive world with no backup. Death was appropriate. That's horrible, Sarah said quietly. That is Therek's philosophy. But then you came. Krezith's voice softened. You, who had every reason to fear me, to leave me, to prioritize your safety. You stayed. You spoke to me like I was person, not dying soldier. You used your own clothing to bandage wounds you could not even properly see. You sat with me through the night, and you talked about your daughter and how stubbornness runs in your family. He placed one large hand on the table between them. You did not infect me with anything. You showed me something I had never experienced. Compassion without obligation, help without contract, care without strategic value. And yes, I formed attachment to you, not because you made me, but because you showed me there is a different way to exist, one where weakness is not failure, where asking for help is not shame, where life has value beyond military usefulness. Sarah felt tears welling up. I just didn't want you to die alone. I know. That is exactly my point. Krezith stood and moved to the window overlooking Earth below. The galaxy fears humans because you refuse to think the way we do. Every other species makes cost-benefit calculations about kindness. You just do it, and it breaks our understanding of how intelligent beings should behave. The declaration that changed everything. Krezith requested a formal assembly of the Galactic Council representatives. They gathered in the observation facility's main chamber. Dozens of species, hundreds of individuals, all there to determine humanity's fate. Krezith stood before them in full ceremonial armor, looking every inch the warrior he had been bred to be. Sarah stood beside him at his insistence, feeling very small and very human in her borrowed clothing. Honored Council. Krezith began in the common galactic language, his translator converting it to every species present. I stand before you as living proof that humanity poses no threat. Instead, they represent opportunity. Murmurs rippled through the chamber. Ambassador Trexus raised a hand for silence. Warrior Krezith, you are still recovering. Perhaps. I am recovered, Krezith interrupted firmly, and I speak with full clarity. You fear humans because they do not calculate kindness. But that is precisely why we need them. He gestured broadly at the assembled species. How many wars has this council mediated in the last century? How many conflicts arise from miscommunication, from inability to bridge cultural divides, from species that simply cannot understand each other's emotional landscapes? Silence. Everyone knew the answer. Hundreds. Humans bridge those divides naturally, not through mind control or emotional infection, but through genuine attempt to understand and care for those unlike themselves. Sarah Chun saved my life not because she calculated benefit, but because she saw someone in need and refused to look away. That capacity, that stubborn, illogical compassion, is exactly what galactic civilization lacks. He turned to face Sarah directly. She gave me a gift I did not know I needed. Not just life, but understanding that there is more to existence than duty and strength. And if humanity can do this for one Therek's warrior, imagine what they could do for all of us. A new beginning. The vote wasn't even close. Instead of quarantine, Earth was offered preliminary membership in the galactic community. Instead of being studied as potential threats, humans were invited to participate in cultural exchange programs. Instead of isolation, humanity stepped into a larger universe that desperately needed what they had to offer. Sarah returned to Montana 3 weeks after crash. Krezith came with her. He'd formally requested assignment to Earth as a cultural liaison, but everyone knew the real reason. The bond they'd formed that night in the forest was real, born not from infection, but from genuine connection. They sat on Sarah's porch, watching the sunset. Cressida massive form barely fit in the reinforced chair they'd had to special order. "Do you know what the other Therids are calling me?" he asked, a hint of amusement in his musical voice. "What?" Cressida changed. Some mean it as insult, but I wear it as honor. He looked down at his hands, all four of them, because I am changed, and it is improvement. Sarah smiled. "For what it's worth, you changed me too. I used to think I was just stubborn and bad at giving up. Now I know that's actually a superpower. Very human perspective." Cressida's laugh sounded like wind chimes. Everything is superpower to humans. Stubbornness is superpower. Crying at sad stories is superpower. Making friends with anything that moves is superpower. "Well, yeah," Sarah said simply. "Because they are. We just didn't know anyone else couldn't do it. More ships have been arriving at Earth every day. Scientists, diplomats, tourists, all wanting to meet these strange humans who love without calculation. Other species were starting to question their own assumptions about strength, weakness, and the value of compassion. And in a forest in Montana, there was a crater where a pod had crashed. The local government had turned it into a monument, placing a plaque that read, 'Here, humanity made first contact. Here, a human refused to let someone die alone. Here, everything changed.'" Sarah thought about that night often. The fear, the uncertainty, the choice that hadn't felt like a choice at all. Someone needed help. What else could she have done? That was humanity's real gift to galaxy. Not that they could bond with anyone, but that they believed everyone was worth bonding with. Not that they made others care, but that they cared so fiercely themselves that it inspired others to try. Cressida reached over and gently tapped Sarah's shoulder with one clawed finger, their version of a friendly nudge. "Your daughter is visiting tomorrow, yes?" "Yeah, she's bringing her kids too. They're very excited to meet you. More small humans who will ask million questions and want to touch my armor." "Exactly." Cressida's eyes literally sparkled with amusement. "I look forward to it. Your family is chaotic, loud, completely unpredictable. Sorry about that." "Do not be. That is exactly what I need." He gazed up at the darkening sky where stars are beginning to appear. Some were familiar Earth stars. Some were alien vessels waiting in orbit. What we all need, whether we knew it or not. Sarah followed his gaze upward. Somewhere up there, the galaxy was learning a lesson humans had always known. That care about each other wasn't a weakness to be exploited or infection to be feared. It was simply the right thing to do. And sometimes, the right thing changed everything.